we talk about called creating positive frames of reference. What are some habits that people can do in terms of their homes that will help to prepare their children consistently? I'll throw one out. Sunday dinner, we make sure we had Sunday dinner together, no matter what. Today people are having dinner here, there. It's kind of broken up. It might have changed a little bit because of COVID, because people kind of had to stay in to an extent, or should have been, or whatever. But at this juncture, what else could people do habitually as families to create a culture and a climate for some things, some habits that would be, good to build on that?
Well, one thing that we do is every Sunday we have a family business meeting on Zoom where all my relatives that live all over the country, all over the world, we every Sunday we sit together for an hour and we just talk. We talk about what everybody's got going on, and we get to see how the babies are doing, and stuff like that. And then that allows for space to incorporate business conversations within the context of social engagement. Business is very social, and so you want to find a way to integrate that into what you're doing. Another thing that I do is once a week, Alicia and I get together with another couple, and we talk about all of our business ventures with each other. All of us have businesses, and we start bringing the kids to those meetings. So we meet, for Saturday, have breakfast, and then we'll have our business meeting, and we let the kids watch, and the kids will watch and learn, and then you'll see the children start forming their own ideas on what they want to do, because they're just modeling what they've seen. And those are a couple of things that I think about that are done, and obviously value in education is important. I give Alicia more credit than I deserve for the fact all the kids are doing well in school, making good grades, and what I do, because again she's the college professor, so she's really into the whole university thing and stuff like that. And so what I do as the guy who runs the business is I then come in and say, okay, as you're going to college, here's the other thing that you really need to know how to do, which is you need to have investments. You need to manage your resources in a certain way. You got to know how to start a business in case that white man doesn't want to give you a job, and you want to have options. And so a lot of times these ideas are things that are just repeatable and easily implementable. And then also just are little things like reminding them of the importance of family. Values are important, because what values determine is where you put your energy, right? So if I value like material things, if I value validation from, say, white folks or whatever the case may be, then that's where I'm going to put my energy. I'm not going to really want to be around my own community. I'm going to want to be other places so that I can go prove myself in the world. And so in our house, our core values tend to probably center around Blackness is a big value. Our kids love being Black. They want to be around Black people. They want, what else? Education. They want to be smart. They don't want to be stupid. We're not going to applaud you because you learned how to twerk today. And what else? I would say ownership and control, and having options. I talk a lot about options, not from a theoretical standpoint. Like my kids probably don't know anything about how to go invest in stock options. That's for later. I just want them to know what option, that it feels good to have options. And then later on, we can talk about stock options, because all stock options are is options. Like the options that you know about in your life literally link directly to what a stock option is and how stock option works. So it's not so much talking about it's not so much just a wealth conversation. It's all the conversations before that, because the other piece about values is that your values will determine what you do with your resources. So if I have one resource I have, one multi-million-dollar resource that every Black person is endowed with from birth is your labor. Your whatever you spend 40 hours a week doing, in your life, that's a valuable resource. That's why people pay you for it. That's why you get a job and they pay you money to do that. So if my value says that I only feel validated if I'm working for that man's company and getting promotions and recognition from him, then I'm going to put my energy toward that. But then there are some families where where the value is, we don't really care if you're working for somebody else or what you're doing for him. We care about what you're doing for this family. So so then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my resources, I'm gonna turn my weapons in the other direction. I'm gonna say, oh, well, then I need to put my time into sitting down with my siblings and forming some sort of family business or contributing to the family pot. Right? China does that very well. China says we do not value your contribution to America. We do not care if you are the greatest scientist in the United States. We want you to be the greatest scientist in China. And that's important because I think for Black folks, if we want to see where a big chunk of our wealth lies, it lies from looking inward as opposed to looking outward. Like imagine a family where you got 5 kids, all of them smart, all of them went to college, all of them have degrees. One's a nurse, one's a doctor, one's a engineer, and all of them they split up and they go into separate directions. They all they all have some master that they work for that they're serving. They all get mad and complain about the racism or whatever. But really, anybody that knows anything about strategy or power or warfare, one of the 48 laws of power, I think it's number 28, if I'm not mistaken, is that you should contain and control your resources. You bring your resources to the strongest point. You don't spread them out, because when you divide it out, it becomes very weak. Like if you imagine a big energy ray, the sun is sending a lot of energy to the ground, but because it's spread out, it just feels like, like warmth. But imagine if you took all that power and put it into one tight little ray, that laser could go through a rock. You see, so people have to understand that coming together is literally the biggest move of Black wealth that will occur in this century, and it's already happening. And the more it happens, the more you're going to see a tectonic shift in the wealth and power distribution in America. And this is going to happen even long before white folks ever write a reparations check.
Wow, that was the laser focus that you spoke of when you combine it, because we're often, and it's because of also how we're trained to look outward, because looking inward is not a good thing. You talk about school. Here's something the Kerner, I talked about this earlier. The Kerner report was done, and it was a study by a commission that looked at African Americans 50 years ago, and it studied health, education, finance, employment, and criminal justice, right? And in those 5 areas, the only area that we improved in 50 years was education. And so when I talk about it, I hear others talk about it, and the education bump was only minuscule. So the question is, well, what good is an education if it doesn't help you in those other areas? And what you've done differently with you taking the education, the formal term of education, from a lot of different places, but then you created your own institute. You created your own school. How important is it for us to create our own institutes, our own educational platforms, so that we don't rely on the label of traditional education, the degree from this place, before we feel like we can go out and do something? I got to get this, I got to get that. How important is it for us to do that, to create our own educational knowledge-based platform?
Well, it's very important. I mean, every household should be an educational institution. Education is, to me, is anything that you put it inside your brain. And so you're being educated by media, you're educated by your parents. The mother's the first teacher, and then the father's the second teacher. And then you run into these other formal educational processes throughout your life. And one thing that I encourage people to remember is that going to school is not the same as getting an education, and getting an education is not the same as actually having knowledge that adds value to your life. Most of us will look back at all the education we've received and realize that 80-90% of the stuff you learn in school you don't even use. It has no impact on improving your life in the key areas that tend to matter. The things that tend to measure your quality of life are health, wealth, and relationships. Those tend to be 3 areas. Are you mentally and physically healthy? How's your wealth doing? Do you have financial security and some degree of prosperity? And how are your relationships with others, relationships with you, relationship with yourself, etc. And so what I would encourage people to do is, if you think about, first of all, you think about it on the big scale, one part of sort of reaccumulating Black wealth that goes out every year is I'm a big fan of the educational platforms that are out there, because Black folks have we have trillions of dollars in human capital. We have just millions of people that were trained on so many different things. They can do so many things very, very well. Whether you're talking about the accountants or the people that know engineering or whatever. So we don't have to pay other people to educate us. And it's, in fact, it's a little bit dangerous to do that, because allowing people to take over your educational process is a lot like letting people feed you. and because they can put poison in the food. And so a lot of what we think is an education is actually an indoctrination. For example, I like our 10-year-old goes to school and she learns a lot of really valuable stuff, but then she starts explaining to me all the different pronouns that gender is a figment of your imagination. And that's where I'm kind of like, okay, let me sit down and talk to you and tell you what my view is. I'm not judging your perspective, but let me just let you know not everybody is on board with that. And I'm kind of, as a black man, I'm kind of like concerned, like, okay, why are we spending all that time talking about this when I really want to talk about some other stuff? Now, if you are in that category, then there's work to do, right? Or understanding how the world works is fine, but there's a whole lot of agendas that get dropped in to our educational process. And I think that if you want to control and manage that agenda, you do what like our friends, the Hebrew Israelites. I love the Hebrew Israelites and the Nation of Islam because they don't let other people educate their kids on average. They just say, no, we want our kids to have our values and that's it. Because they understand that education is largely a value-based kind of narrative, that I'm going to teach you the things that I think are important, and I'm going to give you the facts that I think matter. So if I think George Washington's a great guy and not a slave master who raped black women, then I'm going to present him as a great guy, and you're going to walk away thinking he's a great guy too. So when Malcolm X said that only a fool will let his enemy educate his children, he was right about that, right? I'm not saying we're all fools. The fact is, right, means I'm admitting I'm a fool. I've sent my kids to schools or whatever. But the thing is, though, I think at the very least you want to supplement that process, right? You got to figure out. In fact, there's a concept in mathematics called dynamic optimization, which basically says that if you want to solve a problem, you start at the end and you work your way backward. So with education, you don't just jump in and start learning stuff just because somebody said you're supposed to learn it. You start at the end. Say, where am I trying to be? Where am I trying to get to? Or am I trying to be wealthy? Okay. Well, okay. So I see myself being wealthy 5 years from now, and I work backward. What do I need to know to make those moves? I want to be a billionaire, but before that, I got to be a millionaire. Before I become a millionaire, I got to be a thousandaire. Before I become a thousandaire, I got to quit my job. So next step, figure out how to quit my job. That determines what I'm going to learn. So learn the things that matter for you and learn them from the people who share your values so that you're not sort of being used in a way where a lot of our strongest white supremacists in America are actually black people. White supremacy really doesn't work that well unless you have two parties that kind of agree that this is the strategy. For example, it's like a basketball game. If the Lakers are playing the Denver Nuggets, the Nuggets think they're superior to the Lakers. The Lakers think they're superior to the Nuggets. But it doesn't matter what you think. What matters is what happens on the court. Well, for us, we kind of believe that that man's ice is colder. We believe that working for him is more valuable than working for ourselves. We believe that buying his product is better than buying our product. So we participate in this process because, again, we've been prepared for this since we were children.
You mentioned something. I love that. I'm really glad you brought up the aspect of white supremacy. One of the concepts that we've now shifted to is really using, and I'm asking you to consider buying it, to start using the term white insecurity and white insecurities. And the reason being is because there's nothing supreme or superior about people who take advantage of people's weakness. There's nothing superior about people who use violence as a means and terror as a means of gaining control and promoting themselves. And so, to your point, we use that term and we put it out there. Now, they don't want to say domestic terrorists for white people, but they'll call them white supremacists, right? So they'll give them the asset word, but they won't give them the deficit word. So as we start to communicate, words have power. And I really want us to start using that word to really appropriately term them, because it's the insecurity that makes them treat us the way that they do. And so consider that as you ponder, because you speak to so many people, and we got to start shifting those words, to your point. And then I thought about what you said with Nigeria, right? And how Nigeria and their mindset, and they are very proud people. And there were three things that you said. I only remember two of them. But the thing that just like strikes me so odd about that is, even though they are as sharp as they are, they got that real confident, and they're trained like that. But they let other countries refine their oil and buy it back from them, right? So they their own natural resources, let them have somebody else take them and then sell them back, and they don't even reproduce it. They changed their country, Lagos, which was the capital, to Abuja, only because they had so much trash in that country because they weren't recycling the trash, right? So
wow.
The mindset in terms of control and power and feeling that good, but still having the mentality that the white man's ice is better, which is why Putin talked about going to France. You know, when in Africa, they go to France, right? They go to somewhere else for the hospital. They vacation somewhere else. They don't want to vacation at home because our cars are better. Everything else is better outside. And so I'd love for us to be able to address that. One of the questions asked two things. We got about 6 more minutes. The first one was, what's something good to invest in? If you don't want to say a particular stock, then just give a particular arena or industry that's good to invest in at the moment. And then Lisa Anderson said, a statistic that blew her mind regarding education: whites who get a BS earn 190 and blacks earn 75. Whites get a master's, earn 275, blacks earn 95. That said, how important is it for us to have our own, because we hire each other, and we pay each other better versus not? Jay, you were chiming in?
I do. Yes, gentlemen, we've extended your session until 4:45 to make sure we can answer. You guys can answer the attendee questions, so you don't have to rush off.
Okay. All right.
There you go, Doc. So Doc, you can go ahead and jump in. Tap on the white insecurity versus white supremacy, and then which area or industry would be good to invest in.
Okay, well, you're right about the insecurity piece. I don't doubt that. I think, when I started really believing in Black excellence, white supremacy didn't bother me that much, because I always felt that if you put Black excellence and white supremacy in the same room, Black excellence wins every time. So a lot of times what's going on in my view is that word insecure is very important, because you're talking about insecurities on both ends. One side is insecure, which leads them to oppress people who haven't recognized their greatness, because they know that when we're at our best, we can't be stopped. But then the other side, the other question is, why haven't we recognized our greatness? Well, maybe perhaps because we have an insecurity that we have to address, right? So that term insecurity, it's interesting when you talk about that word insecurity. I think that can be applied. You got white insecurity, which leads to oppression, and Black insecurity, which leads to us submitting ourselves to that oppression. So insecure people form a really unhealthy, dysfunctional relationship that ultimately becomes abusive, right? You think about an abusive relationship. Well, the husband's insecure, that's why he beats his wife. His wife is insecure, that's why she lets her husband beat her. So I think that's the insecurity is an appropriate word for sure. Second piece of that is when you talk about an asset to invest in. Right now, what's going on with the markets is because of this issue with inflation kind of popping up, or the fear of inflation. It's not actual inflation. it's the expectation of inflation, because they've written the stimulus package. They got these other big bills that are coming through. They're going to be trillions of dollars. There are people that believe inflation is around the corner because the economy is heating up. People are taking masks off. A lot of spending is going to occur. And so the chairman of the Fed, Jerome Powell, believes that inflation is not an issue. He's not going to react to it. He could slow it down, but he's not going to react to it. He sees it almost like the boogeyman in the room, whereas the market doesn't believe him. The market believes inflation is on its way. So what that's really done is it shifted the dynamics of the hot areas of investment right now. Before, the hot areas were like the growth tech stocks, like growth stocks that had all this long-term potential and everything else. But that shifted away. Those companies have declined. Now it's back to like cyclicals and companies that are going to do well as the economy reopens, restaurants, cruise ships, casinos, things like that. But I would almost say that if you're talking about long-term 5-10 year horizons for investment, I'm a believer in starting with, just those solid blue chip companies that are just going to make good decisions no matter what. I've always been a big believer in companies like Disney, because Disney has great management. I just knew they were going to figure out how to make money, and they did, right? With Disney Plus. Now they have 100 million subscribers, because when the pandemic happened, they just found something different to do as opposed to running amusement parks. So that's my thought on that. And the last piece about the disparity, she mentioned that basically white people make more money than Black people, and I think that's going to be true for at least another 100 years. I would say this. I'm not saying that there's not a reason to be concerned about that, but I look at it in a certain way that says, well, of course they're going to make more money, because they built this system for themselves to benefit. If I build a system for my family, nobody else is going to make as much money as my kids. Period. You know, if I in my business, I take care of my people first. I hire my people first. I hire people in my network first. Black people, you know. So the same way I can accuse him of being unfair because he won't give me what he's got. Well, he can do the same thing to me. So I don't say much about it because I just learned that the best way to overcome an oppressive system is to get out of that system. You know. So for example, if you went to China and tried to participate in the Chinese economic system, you're going to run into Chinese supremacy everywhere. Like they're going to make sure Chinese people are getting the most powerful positions. They're going to make the most money, even when you show up with more qualifications and all that. You're not going to get a fair shake in a Chinese system because that was not built for you. And so what I think we have to understand is that what we need in our communities, we need a generation of builders. We need millions of kids raised to understand that you can do it on your own. Whatever he can do, you can do better. Build your own. And then that way you can decide what the rules are going to be and how you're going to be treated. So it's not about winning the game. It's about creating a new game. And then at that point, if you want to even design it where you become the automatic winner, you can do that too. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Dr. John Henry Clark, thank you for your answers. Dr. John Henry Clark talks about nation building. Instead of going to buy bricks, build your own. Instead of going to buy shoes, make your own. As we start to look, as you said, now coming out of this medical shift, health shift, what do you think about investing in cryptocurrency is one of the questions that's coming out. And then how do you see moving forward in terms of 2021, 22 and beyond as the world shifts and preparing for business?
Well, I can only tell you what I do with my own money. I do invest maybe less than 10% of my portfolio on cryptocurrency. And I do it because I think crypto has a lot of potential. When it does emerge, I want to be there when it happens, and now the crypto comes with a lot of problems in that, first of all, the volatility is ridiculous. Stocks don't move and wiggle the way crypto does. 2017, everything just crashed out of the blue. Suddenly, all the crypto I had was worthless. And I just held it because I was like, well, just might as well leave this worthless asset over here. And then suddenly the market wakes up again and it could crash again. So people have to be ready for that. So when I hear about people that do things like, I think there's an NFL player who went and got all his paycheck in Bitcoin or something. I thought that was silly. I didn't agree with that move at all. I mean, just because the shot goes in doesn't mean it's a good shot. It's like in basketball. And so I would say that crypto is worth looking at. I think it could be the next big thing. Blockchain is a beautiful technology. It could explode. It's going to be around. I think blockchain will be around forever. I don't know which crypto is going to win. Right now, the talk of the town is Bitcoin, and then a lot of talk is about Ethereum. But what's going to matter 20 years from now? Bitcoin may not even be the primary crypto 20 years from now. When the internet first really started popping, maybe early 2000s, late 90s, the companies that were dominating the internet at that time are not dominating the internet now. Remember AOL, You've Got Mail, and what was some other MySpace and stuff like that. Yeah, that stuff's not here anymore. Now it's dominated by Google and Facebook and all this other stuff, right? So, but the internet, the fundamental technology underlying all of this is still here. It got bigger, but the companies leading the internet has changed. So crypto, I think, is the same way. Blockchain will be here 20 years from now, but Bitcoin may not be. So you got to be real careful about that when you invest.
Going back to the root again. The young lady that started the African American